After careful analysis, in obedience to governing mandates, and pursuant to the rule of law, this court has determined that the only lawful sentence that permits entry of a judgment of conviction without encroaching upon the highest office in the land is an unconditional discharge, which the New York State Legislature has determined is a lawful and permissible sentence for the crime of falsifying business records in the first degree.
Yep, that's me. I bet you're wondering how I got here.
Donald Trump has finally been sentenced for his 34 felony counts in the hush money trial. He is officially a convicted felon, and for his crimes, he will face no punishment. Hey, it's a start, but given the context, which we will discuss, it was probably the best the court could do. By now, you're probably aware in 2016, Trump's fixer secretly paid off his mistress in order to stop the story of their affair from becoming public during Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. It worked. Trump was elected president. In 2024, a New York jury convicted Trump of falsifying business records to conceal the true nature of the payments to his fixer. Judge Juan Merchan scheduled Trump's sentencing for July 11, 2024. Then the Supreme Court's noxious presidential immunity decision in Trump versus United States temporarily halted all the cases against Trump. Judge Merchan rescheduled the sentencing for September 2024. But then Trump argued that the court should postpone the hearing again because being sentenced on 34 felonies could hurt his chances of being reelected president. Trump had publicly attacked Judge Merchan's daughter as a dangerous Democrat and Trump hater, and Judge Merchan said, quote, to avoid the appearance of impropriety, he rescheduled the sentencing for after the election. And once again, Trump's gambit worked. He won the election. However, Judge Merchan now faced the unprecedented situation of sentencing a president-elect to probation, jail, or something else. Judge Merchan rescheduled Trump's sentencing for January 10th, 2025, and said Trump could appear virtually rather than in person. Notwithstanding, Trump filed several motions to try to derail the sentencing. On January 3rd, 2025, Judge Merchan denied Trump's motion to dismiss the indictment for falsifying business records. The defense argued that Trump had presidential immunity, that prosecutor Alvin Bragg committed misconduct, and that the judge made various legal errors. Judge Merchan found those claims unsubstantiated. The judge emphasized the importance of respecting jury verdicts and rejected alternate remedies like delaying sentencing or dismissing charges entirely. And the decision upholds the jury's unanimous conviction. Judge Merchan wrote, quote, defendant argues that his contributions to the city and the nation are too numerous to count. This court agrees that defendant served his country as president and will do so again in a matter of weeks. However, that service is but one of the considerations to weigh under this factor. Despite defendant's unrelenting and unsubstantiated attacks against the integrity and legitimacy of this process, individual prosecutors, witnesses, and the rule of law, this court has refrained from commenting thereon unless required to do so as when ruling on motions for contempt of court. But since Trump's character was a factor in the sentencing, the judge commented, quote, defendant's disdain for the third branch of government, whether state or federal, in New York or elsewhere, is a matter of public record. Indeed, defendant has gone to great lengths to broadcast on social media and other forums his lack of respect for judges, juries, grand juries, and the justice system as a whole. In the case at bar, despite repeated admonitions, this court was left with no choice but to find the defendant guilty of 10 counts of contempt for his repeated violations of this court's order restricting extrajudicial statements. In the case at bar, despite repeated admonitions, this court was left with no choice but to find the defendant guilty of 10 counts of contempt for his repeated violations of the court's order restricting extrajudicial statements order, findings which by definition mean the defendant willingly ignored the lawful mandates of this court, an order which defendant continues to attack as unlawful and unconstitutional, despite the fact that it has been challenged and upheld by the Appellate Division, First Department, and the New York Court of Appeals no less than 8 times. And Judge Merchan observed that Trump is a big fat liar, quote, defendant's arguments that the people committed egregious misconduct by eliciting certain testimony from Mr. Cohen and Ms. Daniels is unsupported, and his arguments mischaracterize the record. And Trump attacked his conviction on the basis that, quote, more than half of the potential jurors purportedly self-identified as unable to be impartial as proof of an unfair system. But those prospective jurors were dismissed. Judge Merchan explains why Trump's claim is nonsense. Quote, first, it is standard practice for this court to ask prospective jurors at the start of every trial to self-identify if based solely upon what they've heard about the case. Up to that point, they have reason to believe that they cannot be fair and impartial, or if they cannot serve for any other reason. Thus, while not particularly significant, we do not know how many prospective jurors self-excused because they doubted their ability to be fair, and how many self-excused for some other reason, such as travel plans, childcare responsibilities, or a scheduled medical procedure. More importantly, a jury panel where half of its members self-identify as not confident in their ability to serve for whatever reason is not entirely uncommon, and their departure left us with those members of the panel who believed they could serve. Now, Judge Merchan should have been able to sentence Trump last summer, but the Supreme Court gummed up the works by issuing a bombshell decision in Trump versus United States that former presidents cannot be federally prosecuted for official actions taken while in office. And Trump's team then argued that the ruling gave him presidential immunity, and thus the New York case should be dismissed, even though most of Trump's illegal actions happened before he became president. Nevertheless, Justice Merchan went to great lengths to avoid the appearance of impropriety, asserting that even though Trump got a fair trial, sentencing him could be considered problematic for the election. Now, in a prior video, we criticized the decision to delay Trump's sentencing until after the election, and Trump's lawyers argued that if he was sentenced before the election, Trump's chances of winning would be diminished. And Trump appealed to the Supreme Court, attempting to assert president-elect immunity, as if near total immunity while being president wasn't enough. But in a 5-4 decision, the Supreme Court did not intervene. So the sentencing proceeded as scheduled. Well, not as originally scheduled, but as later scheduled. And at the sentencing, Trump was sentenced to unconditional release. No fines, jail, probation, or community service. So while the case is over and Trump doesn't really receive any real punishment, he will have 34 felonies on his record. At least unless it's removed on appeal. But prosecutor Joshua Steinglass said, quote,
"This defendant has caused enduring damage to public perception of the criminal justice system and has placed officers of the court in harm's way."
And one of the most interesting moments was when Steinglass revealed that the pre-sentence investigation report concluded that Trump sees himself as above the law and takes no responsibility for his actions. But Steinglass said the prosecution agreed that the appropriate sentence was unconditional release. The, quote, "American people have the right to a presidency unencumbered by the continuing demands of any alternative sentence." Frankly, I think the American people deserve a presidency encumbered by punishment for one's past crimes, but, you know, who's counting? And yeah, apparently, I guess if you're elected president, you can do whatever you want with the world's worst cadre of lawyers. But if you have a legal issue, you will want a actual great lawyer. And my law firm, the Eagle Team, can help. If you've gotten in a car crash, suffered a data breach, especially if you got a data breach letter saying that your information might have been leaked, or dealing with a workers' comp or social security issue, we can represent you or help find you the right attorney. Because it's so important to talk to a lawyer right away so you can maximize your recovery. And by the way, we don't get paid unless you do, so there's nothing up front. So just click on the link in the description or call the phone number on screen for a free consultation with my team. Because you don't just need a legal team, you need the Eagle Team. So click below. Attorney Todd Blanche spoke on Trump's behalf. He argued that Bragg only charged Trump to interfere with the election. He said the American people decided the case never should have been filed, and that while he concurs with the court's sentence, Trump will still appeal. Then Trump addressed the court himself. Trump said he was innocent because he correctly labeled the payments as legal expenses.
The falsification of business records, as they said, was calling a legal expense in the books where everybody could see them, a legal expense. In other words, that legal fees or legal expense were put down as legal expense by accountants.
Trump said that legal experts like Alan Dershowitz and other experts like Tucker Carlson concluded he didn't do anything wrong. And he slammed Michael Cohen as a liar and also said he's no George Washington. And Trump also bragged about winning all 7 swing states. Trump also noted he's still under a gag order, quote, "I assume I'm still under a gag order, but the fact is I'm totally innocent." Justice Merchan waxed poetic about the trial and the jury and the procedures and praised the jurors for their work.
The same burden of proof was applied, and a jury made up of ordinary citizens delivered a verdict. And it was all conducted pursuant to the rules of procedure and guided by the law. Of course, part of what made it feel somewhat ordinary was the outstanding work, preparation, and professionalism of the clerks, court officers, court reporters, security personnel, and the entire staff of this building who did their jobs as they would with any other criminal trial.
And Merchan said that the protections afforded to the president are given to the office holder, not to the occupant personally.
It is the legal protections afforded to the office of the President of the United States that are extraordinary, not the occupant of the office.
He said, quote, "Donald Trump, the ordinary citizen, Donald Trump, the criminal defendant, would not be entitled to those protections." And Justice Merchan explained that given the Supreme Court's immunity decision, this was the only possible sentence available to the court.
The protections afforded the office of the President are not a mitigating factor. They do not reduce the seriousness of the crime or justify its commission in any way. The protections are, however, a legal mandate, which, pursuant to the rule of law, this court must respect and follow.
So for making sense of everything, let's talk to my go-to New York criminal law practitioner, Mitchell Epner. Mitch, what are your thoughts about the way that Merchan handled this?
Thank you, Devin. So yes, Justice Merchan has gotten this case against Donald Trump and the 34 felony convictions across the finish line in what I think is the only way that he could have done it.
Do you think the sentence of unconditional release was a deciding factor in the 5-4 Supreme Court decision?
Yes, it was. It is cited in the Supreme Court's 5-4 line order, saying that that's one of the reasons why they agreed to deny the stay to soon-to-be again President Trump. I think it is virtually certain that they would not have allowed the sentencing to go forward. And in particular, Justice Barrett and Chief Justice Roberts, I think, would not have allowed this sentencing to go forward. They would have joined their 4 other co-henchmen in the Trump versus United States case, where they overturned centuries of understanding of American constitutional law with regard to the presidency and criminal sanctions. I think they would have done it again. And I think that the only reason why the Chief Justice and Barrett didn't join with their 4 co-henchmen was that they saw that there was literally nothing at stake for Trump, and they did not want to further tarnish their reputations, which have been absolutely demolished in what I will call the Mandarin lawyer class since Trump versus the United States came out. It was just a horrible decision issued in bad faith that has really damaged them.
And what do you make of the Supreme Court's 5-4 decision allowing the sentencing to go forward?
It is an absolute indictment of the 4 members of the Supreme Court who voted in favor of the stay. They are bought and paid for. They are in the pocket of Donald Trump. Many people in elite legal circles used to like to say that Federalists and conservative judges were had ideologies, but they weren't partisans. I think that the mask has been ripped away from that. Those 4, Thomas, Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, and Alito, have demonstrated that they will confirm Trump's horse to the Senate. They will do whatever he demands because they have completely and totally acquiesced to him. There is no good faith basis for the stay. They simply are kowtowing.
Now, given the circumstances, do you think it would have been possible to convict Trump of a more severe penalty?
Once he said he wasn't going to impose anything more, I don't think he could have. And in the absence of him saying that he wasn't going to impose anything, I don't think that the sentencing would have been allowed to go forward.
Now, there's been a very minor pedantic controversy over whether Trump is officially a convicted felon. Now that he's been sentenced, is he now officially a convicted felon?
Is Donald Trump now a convicted felon? Yes. Donald Trump is a felon convicted of 34 separate felonies in the state of New York. Those convictions will remain unless and until he gets them overturned on appeal. He will be, in about 10 days, our felon in chief.
Thanks so much, Mitch. But since Trump will now face no real repercussions, he'll be taking office in a few days. And we've already covered what can and will happen if he implements the massive tariffs that he's talking about. If he does, well, we'll all need to save as much money as possible. And one of the things that I'm doing is finally getting a handle on all my subscriptions. Between my personal and professional subscriptions, I was paying out almost $20,000 a year. Who knew that the Tie Clip of the Month Club was so expensive? I wasn't paying enough attention to what I was subscribed to, and so once I started tracking expenses, it was insane how much money was going to subscriptions I totally forgot about. And even more insane was the length of the time these subscriptions were active. And today's sponsor, Rocket Money, is here to help. Because Rocket Money is the personal finance app that helps you cancel subscriptions, lower bills, and manage your money better. It's a great replacement for Mint now that they've shut that down for reasons that are beyond my understanding. I've used Rocket Money to help me cancel subscriptions that I wasn't using for apps that I didn't need anymore, especially now that Succession and Game of Thrones are over. And I use it to keep an eye on everything that I do want to keep so there are no surprise rate hikes. In fact, just the other day, it told me that a service increased their price by $100 a year. I should probably be looking into that instead of reading this ad. Rocket Money has helped save its customers up to $740 a year using all the app's premium features, with over $500 million in total canceled subscriptions. It does that in part by fighting for lower bills. You can simply upload a photo and tap a few buttons, and Rocket Money will negotiate your bills for you, from internet service bills to cable to phone bills. So join the 5 million members using Rocket Money today. You can click on the link in the description or the link that's on screen right now to get started for free. You can also unlock even more features with premium. So again, just click on the link below to get started for free. And after that, click on this link over here for more Legal Eagle, or I'll see you in court.